Good evening. Welcome to For the Hour. I am Glendora Lashley. Today, the secretaries of the Tobago House of Assembly presented their respective progress reports as the Executive Council sought to give account of their first 3 months in office. This new executive, led by Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, campaigned on a mandate to fix the THA and ultimately the island of Tobago. What were your expectations? How do you rate the respective divisions? How do you rate the executive thus far? This evening, we will examine what was presented and you will make the final determination. For the next hour, I have joining me political activist Anthony James, Chairman of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, Dr. Nedd, and Executive Coordinator in the Office of the Minority Councillor, Marilon David. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
How are you guys doing?
Very well.
All right. I know we're talking politics, but we don't need to be so tense. It was, in fact, a very interesting day today. Thank you, first of all, for taking the time out to come out this evening. And what were your thoughts? Let's jump straight into it. What were your thoughts about the progress report as presented by the Executive Council today? And I'll start with Mr. James.
Well, what were my thoughts? Well, it is early days, yet I must say, it's early days, and I think my sense is that the executive is still trying to wrap its head around the issues in Tobago that they need to grapple with in order to cause the progress that the people of Tobago need, and I'm sure they themselves would like to be accredited with performing well against those issues. I see it more as a presentation, because it's very early to assess failure, to assess success, but it's really a presentation of things that they have done so far, which to me is more about intention and signaling, because you can't really do much within 3 months. For me, going forward, like for instance, the Secretary for Education would have spoken. That was, to me, was the best thing, the best aspect of her contribution. The fact that she mentioned she will be looking to develop a Tobago-centric educational system.
Right.
To me, that is long overdue.
I definitely want us to talk some more about that.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to share all your thoughts right away. Let's go to Dr. Nedd. Dr. Nedd, very briefly, your overall thoughts about the mandate Monday presentation.
Right. So good evening, everyone. My perspective may be a bit biased on the front, but I have a lot of expectations for the membership, our PDP membership inside of the THA. We would have campaigned on several very specific issues, and I think that what you saw today was, in fact, groundbreaking. This is historical. You don't see, or you've never seen this occur in the THA, I think, ever. And what we did campaign on was issues of transparency, issues of being accountable, also meeting the promises that we would have made on the campaign trail. We also dealt with issues of monies being owed to persons, and we would have also spoken about the bread and butter issues that affect the average Tobagonian that are concerning to them. And I believe that these very huge ticket items were addressed in just 3 months, because you would have seen, especially in terms of transparency and accountability, the Chief Sec and the executive have been making strides with their various executive meetings. And then that culminated today, where we were able to get a sense as to what is actually going on inside each of the divisions and the direction that we should expect in Tobago.
Okay.
Right? And this sort of process is very novel, and I have high expectations going forward.
Okay, so let's go to Marilon. What did you think about the presentation today?
Let me say good evening to viewers and this esteemed panel. I find myself a part of this evening, especially Dr. Nedd, a very good friend of mine. Today's presentation, as Mr. James would have indicated, as what it was, a presentation. I must say that I honestly believe that we are all on the same page with respect to wanting what is best for Tobago. We just choose different channels or paths to get to it, and I think today's presentation signaled quite a bit. Sean is laughing. It signaled quite a bit of what can be expected, but also it gave way to some loopholes and inconsistencies and what is normally termed fluff in the general arena. What was disappointing for me is that the presentation began with an excuse of the absence of the political leader, yet again from a forum where I think it would be the expectation of the general public to hear him present on something, and to start with yet another absence. To me, it was a blow to the administration, because whilst we have the Chief Secretary leading the charge, there are still outstanding reports that I think persons, and this is not a political statement, the general public would have expected. We still have the outstanding Dubai reports and so on. The PDP administration would have campaigned on certain premises, as Dr. Nedd would have indicated, and one of those premises would have been to expand Tobago's reach, and so we would have seen the Dubai trip, especially as a catalyst for that. So Tobagonians have been expectant as to where are we going to go with that, and I think that was one of the sore points for me in the presentation as it began.
Now it's very interesting, because it seems as if all three of you gentlemen share a very common theme in terms of what you talked about today. Quite conservative and diplomatically said, but it sounds as if, I'm hearing a bit of disappointment, but not coming out, and I suppose we will get to that. I want us to go to a clip of the Chief Secretary expressing what today was meant to be, in his own words, right? And he basically spoke about the fact that don't expect perfection, and what they're trying to do is really track progress. Now, I know Mr. James said it was a presentation and you can't really, rate too much. However, in January, I think it was on January 9th, Sunday, January 9th, our Chief Secretary presented to us a 41 list that they call the mandate that was expected to be taken care of in this first quarter. And I don't know, when I looked at the presentation, I had the document and I was trying to compare what was happening. Hopefully we have the clip, so let's just go to the Chief Secretary in terms of what he said this morning.
This process is not really about perfection. It's not about perfection at all, but it is about tracking progress. And the more we track progress, we will get to the place sooner rather than later, whereby we'll be able to perfect our progression. As an island, we are frustrated that there are many things that we hope to achieve, that we hope we could have gotten donkey years ago, and that we still have not achieved. And so, using this modality, we will be keeping all line secretaries in check. And might I add, an opportunity for me as a leader of the Executive Council to assess every single one of my secretaries and to determine later on whether they are a best fit, or whether they are a poor fit, or whether I need to use what is legally afforded to me. And that's the ability to move secretaries around or to remove secretaries altogether. So this is more or less a quarterly performance appraisal of every secretary.
All right, so gentlemen, having heard that, and I'm coming back to Mr. James. I know you didn't want to necessarily think too much about a rating, but the Chief Secretary, in a sense, he has presented to us words that may cause us to think in that way, because he's saying, okay, this is a performance appraisal, and if secretaries are not up to scratch, there's a possibility of being reshuffled or even replaced. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he's making a general statement. General in the sense that anybody who has a mandate, a government or any executive entity, there must be a report card. Right. And he's speaking in that general sense. Not wrongly. He's not wrong in that broad sense. But when we look at what has been happening in the news, the divisions that have really been bold, and people have a sense that something is happening, because the nation, and observe I didn't say the island, but that's a terrible language. I just heard the Chief Secretary mention that. It's a poor and destructive psychology, and I'm not saying that to disparage. We are not an island. Tobago geographically is an island. There's a people living here with a common history, heritage, culture. We are a nation of people. This is why we have been fighting for rights. Okay. It is because we are a nation of people. And the discussion is going forward psychologically and subconsciously from that perspective. That is what drives us. So that off the bat, the division that has been most in the public domain, looking to embark upon a project that is outstanding in Tobago, everybody would agree, is the development of Scarborough, more so the development of a proper commercial port, which is outstanding, which is long overdue and is very critical to development. When you look at the tonloads of money that has passed through Tobago, let's put it that way, the money that has come out from the Tobagonian economy. And when I say the Tobago economy, I'm not talking about transfers from Trinidad, because that's not Tobago economy.
No, one thing.
Tobago economy comes from a base of the land, the sea, and the air that belongs to Tobago.
So then, let me ask you this, and we will go to Marilon after. Essentially, like I said, there were 41 things presented in January, on January 9th. And actually, the very first one, number one, is in, well, no, that one is a smart app. But there was the consultation with respect, okay, number 40, consultations for building the city of Scarborough to commence this quarter. So you have highlighted one of the key areas of the mandate for the first quarter, and that is one of the, from my estimation, 22 things out of the 41 that has been accomplished, right? Now, with respect to the office of the Deputy Chief Secretary, and Marilon, I want to come to you because you raised the absence of the political leader. Who is Deputy Chief Secretary Watson Solomon Duke? The Chief Secretary started off by, I suppose, explaining the absence, but he also added some additional information, and that is to say that they're still building out the office of the Deputy Chief Secretary. And what I got from it so far is that not much has happened there outside of them creating, I suppose, some of the positions, the Management Services Unit of the THA in the Office of the Chief Secretary. They go through and they establish what roles are needed, how much these people will be paid, what their job description would look like, and so on. So he said that that has happened, and he pointed out that they are seeking office space for the office of the Deputy Chief Secretary, which I believe it's that building down at where Youth and Sport is, down at Shaw Park. They're hoping to move the division there, from there to Glen Road, and have the Deputy Chief Secretary occupy that. Do you think that that's a good enough reason to excuse the political leader / Deputy Chief Secretary, who, mind you, at this time is in Trinidad, campaigning more on the political side, attempting to contest elections there? Do you feel as if that, and I would like to come to Dr. Nedd as well to comment on that, given that he's the party chairman.
So it's a very interesting slant that you're taking there, Glendora. Before we get there, I want to just touch on the opening remarks, and you would have brought that up with Mr. James in terms of what the Chief Secretary would have said, that this is not a perfect process, it's a process, and so on. I honestly think that what was done is that he put out a disclaimer first. And I'm going to use the example again by Mr. James. He said that it's only 3 months, and it's more like a presentation. However, when you apply for a job or you are hired for a job, there's something called a probation period. There's a 3-month, in most instances, probation period, at the end of which it is determined if you have what it takes to get this job done. And I think to simply pass it off as well, it's just we're trying to make progress and there are mistakes. Not when you would have campaigned on the premise that we could get this done, we could do it differently, and in the first quarter, all these things are going to be achieved. Now, I'm going to leave that there for a bit and go to the question that you would have asked. One of the basic concepts of management is that you begin with the end in mind. So when you initiate something, you would have already mapped out what the process or the progress and the project should look like, what it should end. So to say to us that we are still working out roles and responsibilities and so on, but in the same breath to say that MSU, we've already identified positions and salaries and so on. What you're saying to us is that persons have been already assigned, or whether or not they've been hired or not, but positions have been assigned, but we don't know what is the objective. We don't know what is the purpose. We don't know what is the overall plan.
So you're saying that today,
the direction that this office is going to go in? How is it going to benefit the THA?
So you wanted to hear today that build out. Tell us
that
what
should
the office
have
of
been
the
part
Deputy
of
Chief
it, and it leads me to a bigger concern, because what is the overall plan? And one thing that the 100-day report puts pressure on you for is to remove yourself from being strategically aligned and begin to rush to get things done to create public perception. And I think that is something, it works in your favor and against your plans, because what we want to hear, and again, Mr. James brought up the project with respect to the development of Scarborough. And it is an ideal project, it's a great idea. But how are we intending to achieve this? What is the plan to get it done? Because there are a number of factors involved in even a medium-sized project for development. And if we're saying we're building out a city, there are a number of concerns and a number of questions that are not being answered. Yes, we have consultations, but we are not hearing the answers to the questions that are being asked.
So you wanted to hear more from that
we want to hear the how. How is this going to be done? We have stakeholders who we know are landowners. We have business owners. We have people who have run business in this same city that they consider to be deplorable, but they've been there 25, 30, 40 years running the businesses. So for this development to take place, is it that we have to remove everyone from in Scarborough? If we have to develop the port, what are the logistics that are going to be employed in this developmental process? These are the things that people are not being told. The business owners, the landowners, are we removing them?
One of the things, did you follow at all any of the consultations that actually happened? Okay, because all of those questions were being asked, but one of the things that was repeated quite often is that, okay, we are presenting this to you for your feedback to make the changes. Nothing is cast in stone yet. This is just an idea. And if I am not mistaken, those first 3 was to get the feedback, and now they're going to, today I think the secretary said that they're going to present a new design And then there will be another set of consultations in August. And I'm going to go to Dr. Nedd, Chairman of the PDP, to tell me if I got that correctly, and also for you to make a statement, if you can, on the absence of the Deputy Chief Secretary and your political leader.
So let me give a perspective on how this meeting came about, at least how I see it. You want to think of it like a quizzing. So it's like we're quizzing the THA on its status. And as you know, if you are taking a course of some sort, your review is really comes up on your end exam. So what I'm hearing a lot of is we didn't hear everything fixed, right? What we saw today was a huge list of accomplishments that occurred within 3 months of entering the THA, which I think needs to be fully applauded. There may not have been items that people wish to hear about because, of course, it's part of what's going on. It's just a presentation of what has been going on up to this point. So I think we accomplished a lot in this session, because remember, as they said, this is going to happen quarterly, right? So as things progress, you will hear more from all other aspects that were not spoken to in this session, right? So that comes to the Chief Secretary, right? The Deputy Chief Secretary. And the Deputy Chief Secretary is the political leader of the party, and he has a large hat to fill on many roles for this party. The Chief Secretary made, I think, a sufficient response, because that's the status currently, and he is to say what is going on in this moment, right? Going forward, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more details as the Deputy Chief Secretary has an opportunity to fully get his division in play and can properly speak to what's going on in his division.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to stop and take a break, and I would really like to hope that information will be forthcoming, because number 37 on that list, mandate list from January, was a Tobago office to be established in Trinidad with responsibility for attracting and engaging investors, pursuing autonomy, and educating Trinidadians re Tobago's autonomy. However, we're seeing a different thing happening at this point in time. Anyway, thank you for viewing. We are going to take a short break. It is 4 the hour. Stay with us.
Our national borders, our first step to security, but a possible access point for guns, drugs, crime. If it does not look right, do the right thing. Call Crime Stoppers anonymously. 800-8477. Report possible border crime.
Tobago is Easter, so join us. Call Thorns Place 745-7306 or 682-8676 and book your stay now. Rooms as low as 200 TT. Message us on WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. Just a 5-minute drive from the Scarborough Port. Tobago is Easter, so join us.
Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
Rest easy at American stores. Up to 20% off. Outstanding discounts on selected Serta, Sealy, and Therapeutic mattress brands. Check us out today at American Stores, where we make quality living affordable.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy our treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
Thank you for staying with us. And if you're now joining us, you're looking at For the Hour. I am Glendora Lashley, and in studio with me I have a panel of three very vibrant gentlemen. Political activist Anthony James, chairman of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, Dr. Nedd, and executive coordinator in the Office of the Minority Council, Marilon David. All right, and we're having a discussion here on Mandate Monday, which was presented today by the Executive Council of the Tobago House of Assembly. If you did not look at that, just go to the Tobago Updates page, find the live stream, and make sure that you take it in, especially if you're a Tobagonian. You need to know what was said. Essentially, the backdrop for this conversation is that in January, or on January 9th, our Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Honorable Farley Augustine, presented a list of 41 things that he said the Executive Council were to achieve in this first quarter, the first 3 months of their term. And so today, they presented their first status report, progress report, as he called it. He said, don't expect perfection. So I want to go in a bit, gentlemen, into some of those 41 things. We discussed some already. Mr. James raised the redevelopment of Scarborough. That was a big one. The promise that consultations for building the city of Scarborough to commence this quarter, that was a promise on the mandate. It did in fact happen. There are several others. The introduction of the new initiative called the Smart App, Show Me a Road Tobago. All right, that's a big ticket item according to the Secretary for Infrastructure, Trevor James, and that was achieved. There were several others in terms of tourism. Well, there were 3 things in tourism, and I saw that all 3, in a sense, can be counted as they started achieving them. And we're going to get to some of those things. One of the interesting things that, there were 2 to me, 2 things that came up today that were quite interesting and unexpected. I don't know if you all feel the same way. Mr. James actually raised one earlier. But the first one has to do with the framework for athletes with respect to Tobago athletes who are selected to go to Trinidad. And we have a clip of the Secretary, Pastor Terence Baines, speaking on that. Yes, so let's get to that clip.
Sportsmen and women who leave Tobago and the kind of treatment that is meted out to them when they end up in the Trinidad space. That's something that we have lamented about for years and years, and what we have done at the division is that we have established a comprehensive and precise framework to facilitate the seamless process when athletes from Tobago are chosen to participate in any of the national training. We are going to make sure that our athletes are treated properly. We're not going to depend on anybody to do it for us. We are going to take the lead and make sure that they are treated properly.
All right, so for me, being a past administrator in basketball nationally and in Tobago, that sounded like a pretty good thing to me. The only problem is the secretary did not give any additional information other than to say that they created that framework. Is that something that stood out to you guys? Is that something that means anything at all to you? And even the viewing public, is that something that means anything to you? How do you rate that, something like that?
Yeah, it's critical, you know. But it's much deeper than what he has hinted there. If I gleaned a philosophy from what he was saying there. Now, sport is a very rich industry which Tobagonians have been deprived of, debarred, shut out by the system. As a matter of fact, if you want to look at sports, you'll be able to determine what kind of relationship Tobago and Trinidad has. If you look at sports, sports define the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad. All the selectors from Trinidad. What I got from Pastor Baines there is that he was really speaking more about physical and social accommodation when athletes from Tobago go down to Trinidad.
Are you at all concerned, any of you, the other gentlemen, are you concerned about financing for some of these things?
Well, clearly.
Because for me, when I heard it, I thought about, okay, finally, our Tobagonian athletes, they will have a stipend in their pocket, they will have their transportation and their accommodation, you know, taken care of. You don't need to go down there and get the surprise and end up staying in a place where when you turn around, your hand hitting all over the bathroom, if you guys remember those places. But do we have the money for some of these things?
Allow me to expand more on that. Tobago has the money to do that, and they have to see about that. But I'm saying, but even if, as you see about the social and physical accommodation, the discrimination will continue.
That's understood. That's understood, Mr. James, and we agree. We definitely agree on that, in the sense that there are issues that need to be addressed between Tobago and Trinidad. The relationship between the islands, the way that some Tobagonians are treated when they're in Trinidad. That's a given. I don't think any of us would disagree with the intention of the policy.
I'm not saying that anyone would disagree with the submission that I've made, or Pastor Baines would have made. But I'm saying, but if we are looking to really empower and to cause it, which ought to be the objective, to cause it Tobagonian to fulfill his fullest potential. It's not simply a case of making the accommodation better socially and physically, because even if you accomplish that, the Tobagonian potential will still not be. I think that's the real. You see what happened in Tobago? The responsibility of politics in Tobago is twofold. I want us to really hear this. Just allow me to wrap up this.
We get you, yes, because I'd like the other two to contribute.
It's twofold. We have the domestic politics to deal with, which is really running an administration, and this is what the PDP have been doing today. They are reporting on what they have done.
Right.
But there's a bigger issue that we also have to attend to. Because if we just concentrate on just developing Tobago, we have settled for a local government in Tobago, a domesticated people who will really go nowhere, and we just say we develop Tobago and we are satisfied with that. But in terms of achieving the bigger goals, Tobagonians will not achieve that.
I think we may need a whole separate program for you to raise some of those issues, but you definitely...
The issues are there, and we cannot shy away from it. Otherwise, what we are going on here is really redundant, unless I'm saying we have settled for being a non-distinct people.
Okay.
Unless we have settled for that.
Gotcha. So let's hear from Marilyn.
Just to realign from what Mr. James is saying, and to bring back into focus what you would have started off with in terms of the idea. And you raised a very critical point, because there is the idea is a novel one, it's a great idea, but the how how is this going to be achieved? And I think that I would have begun my initial presentation by using a term fluff in terms of we're hearing things. And we're hearing that this is what we could do, and this is what, and I would have mentioned something even while we were off here. When talking to Dr. Nedd, I said the term accomplishments, I don't see it as being factored here, because what we've seen happen over the last 3 months, in a great sense, are operational things that the divisions normally carry out.
Right.
And so meetings and stakeholder forums and so on. These are things that every division aspires towards. It's not a PDP thing, it's not a PNM thing. It is the way the divisions operate. They're supposed to have a strategic plan, and they work according to a plan.
Let me ask
so they
you
try
this.
to go in that direction.
Let me interrupt you to ask you this. Do you think that Tobagonians have become now accustomed to those kinds of expressions as quote-unquote accomplishments? Because this is not something that's new. People go in, they do what they're supposed to do, and then they bring it to you as something that is an accomplishment. And that's why I highlighted 3 key unexpected areas, and we just spoke about one. So is it that you're seeing it that way? And then I'd love to hear from Dr. Nedd as to how he views that.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I'm saying. The public servants have been doing their jobs for a long time, and these are things that happen on a day-to-day basis in the respective divisions. Now, if we are looking at, as you would have indicated, we have 41 ticket items that in January were identified that this is going to take place in the first quarter, this is going to take place, this is going to take place. And no stage was identified in the process of its completion. So we are seeing now a number of the ticket items where we just at the beginning stage. We're just at the beginning stage. Well, we've started our conversation, and we are still not hearing the delivery process on the conversations that have been started. And so what I'm saying is that, yes, we come to be accountable, or to give an account of what the THA has done in the last 3 months. But what we're looking at is just basically how the divisions, every division has delivered. And so it's not necessarily accomplishments based on targets that have been set.
Now, you raise a very important point, and Dr. Nedd, I want to come to you because one of the things that happened today that many of us noticed is that, yes, we got the list of all the nice fancy things, but there was not so much any information on what were the setbacks? Why this did not happen? And on our live, Donna is saying, she has a question, is the jetty for Speyside to Little Tobago ready for Easter as promised? I told you I went through the list. That's one of the things I didn't hear about, and I have a circle around it because I'm saying, well, okay, they did not speak to this. I actually checked social media to see if I missed an announcement.
And they spoke to them.
And I saw that on, I think it was, there's a date here, I wrote it somewhere, I will find it. Press release on January 25th, so this is number 35. The THA to expedite in time for Easter 2022 the work on the jetty. I didn't hear it today, maybe I missed it, but I wanted to hear on that. But Dr. Nedd, let's come to you for your commentary on this.
All right, so let me say in general, the list of things that we have put forth to the public are not typical operational activities inside of the THA. They're actually unique things that have not been occurring, and that's why these things are novel. And to have any sort of progress on these matters that have not been occurring is what I would call an accomplishment. I'd give an example for myself, because we're talking about the sports. All right, I represented Tobago as the top chess player in Tobago, and it was very helpful to hear, useful to hear as a person who was involved in that way, that the THA is saying that they are willing to support in various ways. I'll tell you, as I went down to Trinidad, I did not have support in terms of transportation, accommodations, or anything surrounding that representation of Tobago. So just hearing the Secretary say that is one of the starting points in that process. The details are to be fleshed out. We have to give the Secretary an opportunity to do so. This is our report. It is not meant to be a fully detailed report, or else we will be there for hours on end for every single division. Right? And with that being said, I think we heard what you should hear from the various secretaries. The line items, the topic items that we are doing, and then as time progresses and as further reports come out, we'll begin to hear more and more details that we wish to hear on all of these items.
All right.
I'm just glad that we are excited and we are getting to learn and see how a THA and an organization is actually supposed to run.
Right. Another unexpected thing that happened today, which is what Mr. James raised, was the theoretical framework for the Tobago curriculum. But I want to wait a bit because I want to be able to pull the clip if we can get it. So I'm going to come back to that. And I want to go now to what I consider to be a critical area that I heard today with respect to, again, on the list of 41, one of the things was the increasing international airlift, right? The tourism secretary, she presented first, and she said that there were two possibilities right now for the Executive Council to perhaps be able to consider. One of those possibilities they are already looking at. Can we actually hear from the Secretary of Tourism with respect to what she said today about this? All right, so we're getting that clip.
Eagerly looking forward to a Tobago Carnival this year were not disappointed as the dates were finally revealed.
And I'm pleased to say that the date that we have decided to host Carnival is from the 28th to the 30th of October 2022.
Secretary Boris added that the division has already put together a dynamic committee to plan the event.
We have a number of consultants who have agreed to come on board to provide their expertise and their advice, and they'll be able to execute this event, and we're looking forward to the participation of all our stakeholders and everybody who has been waiting for Carnival to come to Carnival in October.
Meantime, President of the Tobago Business Chamber, Martin George, is happy that the dates for Tobago's Carnival have been released. In a statement shortly after the Tourism Secretary made the announcement, George said the Chamber is anxious.
Finally, with respect to airlift, increasing domestic capacity. So we have seen results as recent as last week where CAL has now put on additional flights, and that has been through constant communication with this assembly and the management of Caribbean Airlines. Our stakeholders have been very vocal in terms of their dissatisfaction with airlift to Tobago, and in those discussions we were able to have CAL increase their capacity, and we're seeing the results of that. So we'll continue to advocate for increased capacity on the sea and air bridge. We also have to discuss with CAL the resumption of the JFK to Tobago service, as well as look at other regional routes such as Grenada and Barbados, because Tobago has to be open to regional airlift. So those discussions with CAL will be centered around that JFK to Tobago service as well as regional airlift, and that discussion should be taking place within the coming week. We also had 2 successful meetings with international charter providers who want to provide direct airlift to Tobago, one from Miami to Tobago and the other from Frankfurt to Tobago, to start in the second quarter of this year. We have one proposal in front of us that we are currently evaluating, and the other company, which wants to do the Frankfurt route, they have to submit their proposal to us for us to consider. But at this time, this is looking very viable and very lucrative, and it's something that the Tobago want to partner with these companies to be able to provide that direct airlift, and it provides the opportunity for hoteliers now to sell packages to ensure that we're able to market Tobago in places that it may not have been marketed before, and we will continue to pursue other avenues to get direct airlift into Tobago.
All right, so we got much more than we bargained for there, but so be it. Critical to Tobago is airlift, our main revenue earner outside of our annual subvention through the national budget is tourism, thus foreign exchange. It is no secret that tourism, particularly international arrivals, have been declining severely, and we've had a lot of issues. Prior to the start of the COVID pandemic, it seems as if the marketing agency for tourism, TTAL, they presented information to show that they were making some progress. However, COVID happened, and that essentially sort of shut down. The Chief Secretary gave the Tourism Secretary a mandate, get airlift. I was quite surprised when she said second quarter implementation, because we're in March. But she did say that Mr. James, you're breathing hard. Mr. James, I think you may be a little worried. You may be a little worried about this one, right? But she did say that there's one proposal in hand. I think that's the Miami Tobago one from some sort of international charter provider. Again, no details as to who the company is, so that we could Google that or anything like that. And she did say that a second proposal is being expected, perhaps the one that I may be personally excited about. That's Frankfurt to Tobago, again from another international charter company. The sad thing about it, or the challenging thing, is that we've had an interesting history with charters. How do you all feel about the announcement by the Tourism Secretary today?
I know we have just about 8 minutes again also.
Not much time, correct.
Right. So let me say in response to this, let me congratulate all the secretaries on their presentation / accomplishments and so forth. Whatever they have done, let's congratulate them on that, because they have done a lot, right? And let's congratulate them on that. The worrying thing for me that you caught me sighing there, because discerning a psychology coming out, emanating a psychology, a philosophy, if you can call it that. This has been going on for the longest while in Tobago. Over the last 21 years, if you might see, you might even go back to the last 25 years. What we've been doing in Tobago is talking about how much arrivals we have had, how many arrivals. This plane arrived. But to go in to do a real investigation, how do those arrivals translate into the different sectors of the economy? All right? So as a result of you having these arrivals coming, this person stayed here, they spend there, and the person who they spend their money, the business that they spend, that they would have spent their money in, as a result of that, they were able to do that. There is no real accounting and breaking down of the economy in Tobago, and that's the psychology I'm seeing. We are focusing on arrivals, and then we wait for Trinidad to send money for us. There is no real, and it's a worrying psychology, and it's a misuse. I'm telling you this. I want the panel to hear me. I want Tobagonians to hear me, because this thing has been missing for a long time. The reason why we have government in Tobago, that they call the Tobago House of Assembly, is because a motion was moved for internal self-government. The internal self-government is a premise that a nation exists, and you have to actually run a total government. Trinidad and Tobago had internal self-government, and they had to run a government. When you're running a government, you have to break down every sector of the economy and report on it. What we are doing here is just skimming the surface and so on, and that is passing. It's happened for 21 years, we have 25, and it's continuing now.
We have to get you back for a separate, in-depth discussion, because what you're bringing to the table there, we don't have the time to even get into it, but definitely most appreciated. One of the things that Mr. James highlighted is a need for the Tobagonian public to have that in-depth information, disaggregated information from the arrivals and the income. I've had that discussion prior to now. I've asked the questions because I remember figures being presented and I thought, what? And then I got a breakdown. So that's something that we may need to look into. But let's hear your thoughts very quickly, because we need to, before we wrap up, go to education.
So I want to bring in a concept here. I call it's from science called independent particle theory. It's way in which you look at calculating anything, right? So everything can be broken down to many different factors. And we're talking about tourism in Tobago. One of the factors is the air bridge, sea bridge. That's one of the factors. It's important. You have to have a way to get people on the island and to have them access our services and impact our tourism product here, right? But there are many other factors that also have to be handled, right? And as you deal with stakeholders, for example, stakeholder conversations, you will get into the other aspects. One of those would be what Mr. James here is speaking on, which is the statistics, right? Another Mr. James, Chris James, would have pointed out that we don't know how much money we get per tourist, right? Yeah. But in order to do that, that requires actual collection of data.
But
over time.
didn't, and I'm saying this because this is actually a discussion I've had prior to now. When the Tobago Tourism Agency was introduced, they did present information along that line, because I remember when I saw what they projected as potential income and how it was spent, I called the agency at that time, different media capacity, and I said, come on man, you're pulling our legs, this can't be serious. And they actually presented the breakdown, because my first thought was at the time, those figures are too high. And then I started asking, where does this money go? How does it trickle down? How many taxi drivers are earning? Where are they spending? The thing about it, I suppose, and we're going to need to have that discussion, is that the THA, the new executive, they may have to implement a policy mandate where they actually do some research. Pull up the policy, the planning units, the I don't know if PRDI is still in existence, and actually do additional research. There are some small research units, but we actually need this data. But I am pretty sure, and I saw Marilon shaking his head, that information did come from the Tobago Tourism Agency well before COVID time, when they were taking off. They presented that information, because I remember questioning the amount of money that they said they were going to lose, which, by the way, was backed up by the Hotel and Tourism Association.
Correct.
They were saying that we stand to lose this amount, and I was like, they're crazy. And then I called the tourism agency, and they broke it down. Unfortunately, I want us to kind of skip a little bit ahead, because we're out of time, and I definitely want to raise this other unexpected highlight. At least between Mr. James and I, we saw that. I don't know how you gentlemen feel about it. Let's play the clip if we have the Education Secretary speaking about the development of a theoretical framework with a focus on Tobago-centric education.
The Division of Education, Research and Technology is currently engaging in the first strategic planning process in 13 years, as the last strategic plan was developed since 2008. We have completed the theoretical framework upon which the curriculum is being redesigned, and I'm proud to say that this curriculum is going to be Tobago-centric in nature. In keeping with contemporary global trends of planned change and transformational leadership, the division, which I now fondly call DIRTEC, is reviewing the vision, mission, and goals that will improve services throughout the education sector that would result in deliberately improved student performance. The strategic plan places special emphasis on all the following areas: special education institutions and support for the differently abled citizens, revolutionary systems and structures for ongoing research and scholarship distribution to reflect the priority areas for human capital development. Programs and projects that will target different learners and promote inclusivity within the formal and informal education system.
All right, so there you heard it, the Secretary for Education, Technology and Research. Is that the name of the division now? Now, I got extremely excited, but unfortunately, there's another part of me that always asks about the breakdown and the costing and all of that. But I really, really loved that particular announcement. How do you guys feel about that? Mr. James and I sort of agree on that, so let's go to Mark.
I will pick firstly the topic that came up very early on in our conversation with respect to the Tobago-centric type curriculum. Now, before going into it, let me take the time to identify a lot of what was presented, things that have been ongoing in the different aspects or the different areas within education, differently abled. All those areas are things that are ongoing conversations that this administration has now come into the stream or the flow of the conversations and are continuing the conversation. Now, when we speak of a theoretical framework, and again, I want to use words that the average man, we could all understand. When you say to me that we have established a theoretical framework, I don't understand what that means. And then you say to me in the follow-up to that is we are going to be focusing on a Tobago-centric curriculum. What are you saying to me there? Is it that the curriculum that is going to be developed will now centralize or concentrate Tobago's intellectual property into Tobago alone, or we want to begin to create minds or develop minds that we can market internationally? So I am not clear on what is a Tobago-centric curriculum. And even with that, in terms of shifting curriculum focus, there are a number of factors. And as you keep saying, we've not heard the hows. You know, the breakdowns and so on. There are a number of factors that must be considered. One, we have the basic stakeholder engagement in terms of our stakeholders here in Tobago. We have the wider engagement with respect to the regional body. We have CXC that we now need to approach. Is this Tobago-centric curriculum going to align itself to what is the Caribbean Examinations Council, the Examination Council's strategic plan, or are we now going to create a curriculum on our own? Now, the thing with creating a curriculum on our own is that that curriculum must be tied to an overarching developmental plan for the island. So if we are creating a curriculum that speaks to the development of, as we say, Tobago-centric type systems, are these systems ultimately feeding into what can be considered to be the broader scope of development for Tobago? And how is it going to position us now to be the international type Tobago that we've been hearing broadcasted, that Tobago can reach the world and can become this developed country and so on? So there are a number of factors that have not been catered to or considered in simply saying theoretical framework and Tobago-centric curriculum.
No, you're really hitting the hammer, and maybe Dr. Nedd can shed some light, because the questions that you're asking, these questions have even come out in the consultations for the redevelopment of Scarborough, where people are asking. I remember one planner, well-respected planner, they asked, what is this tied to?
Yeah.
Where is the overall goal? In the past, many of us, we laughed at the Comprehensive Development Plan, Initial 1 and 2.0. We laughed at that, but in this case, we are getting a basket of goodies that we're not sure is tied to anything. I will say that I did hear Dr. Vanish James, I think it was, in the consultation with the Scarborough redevelopment. He sort of hinted to something may be going on, but he said he couldn't speak to it and he didn't want to talk to that in response to a similar question, because there are many people who will ask, okay, as he said, you're changing the curriculum, what is it tied to? The Education Secretary, she spoke about building the human development capacity. She spoke about digitizing education and making sure that our people in Tobago are ready you know, to adopt digitization and function well. None of us will disagree that those are good ideas.
Agreed.
But Dr. Nedd, help us here if you have any information. And we're putting it on the spot because you're obviously not a member of the executive, but you belong to the ruling party. Is there something that is to come that we can tie all this to?
Well, what I could generally say is during the campaign, we did speak to the need to account for the Tobago culture, its heritage, its own way of thinking, its own history in the way in which we approach our curriculum, studies, and education, right? So if we are going to continue doing that, we need to hear from the requisite secretary that they're actually pursuing that. And that is what you heard from our own Zorisha Hackett. As I said before, the details accordingly need to be brought forward with time. You'll get to that. And as I was just sharing, the way in which you look at anything, you look at the many parts, right? You have to first say, yes, we want to account for Tobago and its history and its heritage, and then you need to look at all the other things that we spoke about, SCA, CXC, CAPE, internships, international influence, jobs, all these other things are factors to be considered. And how does this issue of heritage in Tobago affect all of that? As an educator and researcher myself, I have even a ton of other questions to add in here, because we haven't even done tertiary education level things in Tobago, and I think we have the opportunity to do that now.
And definitely food for thought, a lot of content for another discussion. We have to wrap up, and I'm asking you gentlemen, I simply want a number right now as we close. Rate the performance appraisal today. 0 to 10, 0 being you're completely unimpressed, 10 being you're completely impressed. We will start with Mr. James.
10 being
you're completely impressed. 0, you wasn't impressed at all. Give me a number, one number.
I give him a 7.
7.
10.
10.
Speaks to the biases on the table. I will go 2.
2. Oh my gosh. Okay. Someone of our producers will do the math there and tell us how we come out. You have a 7, you have a 10, and you have a 2, and maybe it speaks to the table that we have. Thank you so much for tuning in to this first episode of For the Hour. We definitely had a good time for this hour. We only have 1 hour. Let me thank all of my panelists, political activist Anthony James, Chairman of the PDP, Dr. Nedd, and Executive Coordinator in the Office of the Minority Council, Marilon David. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we can have it again. Thank you to the producers. Remember to check out the stream on Tobago Updates. Also, if you missed Mandate Monday, go to the Tobago Updates page. It is there. Look at it, and then you can come back and look at what we've said here and make your determination. Good night.